The main point here is not hard to see. A lot of people no longer believe Erika Kirk is simply a private person who was pushed into public life by events around her. More and more people are starting to think that she is fully stepping into the spotlight, fully accepting the spotlight, and maybe even chasing that spotlight in a way that makes them deeply uncomfortable. That is why this issue keeps growing. It is not only about one event, one speech, or one public moment. It is about a pattern that people think they are seeing. It is about the way she appears in public, the way she is presented, the way she is placed at the center of things, and the way her past now gets pulled into the conversation as people try to understand what is really going on. That is where this becomes a much bigger story than just simple criticism. If this were only about one awkward stage entrance, one bad speech, or one public appearance that did not land well, people would move on. That happens all the time. Public figures have rough moments. People laugh, people complain, and then the next story comes along. But that is not what is happening here. What is happening here is that critics are stepping back and looking at a larger picture. They are asking whether this public rise is really natural, whether it makes sense, and whether Erika Kirk has been moving toward this kind of role for a lot longer than many people first believed. That question changes everything, because once people stop seeing a public rise as accidental, they start looking for signs that it may have been wanted all along. They start looking for old patterns. They start asking who she was connected to before, who she dated before, what kind of people were in those relationships, and whether those relationships point to a bigger truth about how she moves through life. Now, to be fair, nobody's dating history by itself proves motive. It does not prove character. It does not prove intent. But it absolutely becomes part of the public conversation when people feel that someone's rise to power or influence is too sudden, too polished, or too forced. And that is exactly why this topic has become so charged. Critics are not only saying they dislike Erika Kirk as a public figure, they are saying they think they understand the pattern now. They are saying this is not random. They are saying this is not a grieving widow slowly stepping into a role out of duty. They are saying this looks more like someone who has long wanted access to influence, wanted proximity to big names, wanted a larger platform, and is now standing in the exact kind of position that fits that pattern. That is the heart of the criticism. It is not just dislike, it is suspicion about motive. What made that criticism hit even harder is how visible the public presentation has been. People keep pointing to the big entrances, the stage moments, the attention, the public praise, and the language used around Erika Kirk as she is introduced and elevated. That matters because public image is never just about one person. It is also about the people around them deciding how to frame them. And in this case, many viewers are looking at that framing and asking a very simple question. Why are they trying so hard to make her happen? Why is she being pushed so hard into a space that so many people do not think she naturally fits? That is a brutal question, but it is the one driving much of this conversation. If the public believed she was clearly gifted for the role, clearly dynamic, clearly able to lead, and clearly connecting with people in a powerful way, then the criticism would lose some force. But that is not how many critics see it. Instead, they see someone who, in their view, does not bring natural fire, does not bring strong presence, and does not seem to earn the level of elevation she is being given. And when the public feels that a person is being handed status instead of earning it, the backlash becomes much stronger. That is also where the dating history argument enters the scene, not as proof in any hard legal sense, but as part of the public story people are building in their minds. They are looking backward and asking whether Erika's major relationships also placed her near men with profile, position, ambition, or possible upward path. And once people start thinking that way, every past relationship gets read differently. People no longer see just romance. They start seeing strategy. They stop asking only who she dated and start asking what those men represented at the time she dated them. This is why the minor league baseball story has gotten so much attention. Critics are taking the timeline of that relationship and comparing it to the rise and fall of that player's career. Then they are connecting that to the next relationship and then the next. From there, they build a theory that says Erika does not simply date for love. They say she dates toward opportunity, toward image, toward rise, toward status. Now again, that is an interpretation, not a proven fact. But it is a powerful interpretation, and it is spreading because it fits the larger public feeling that she is too comfortable with fame, too comfortable with being put forward, and too willing to occupy public space that many people believe should not belong to her so easily. And that public feeling is important, because in the end, most media battles are not decided only by hard proof. They are also shaped by whether a story feels true to the audience. That does not mean the audience is always right. Often it is not. But once people get a feeling that someone has been building toward attention for years, they start fitting new facts into that frame. A stage entrance becomes proof of ego. A high-profile appearance becomes proof of ambition. A leadership title becomes proof of a long plan. And suddenly every move looks less like duty and more like desire. That is what makes this so hard for Erika Kirk. Even actions that may have a simple explanation now get interpreted through a much darker lens. If she speaks publicly, critics say she wants the spotlight. If she stays visible, critics say she is enjoying the moment too much. If she is praised by others, critics say the praise is forced. If she takes on a major role, critics say she was always trying to get there. Once a public image turns in that direction, it becomes very hard to stop the slide. Because every new appearance feeds the same story. The phrase many critics keep returning to is that she is being forced on the public. That phrase matters. It tells you the backlash is not only about her personality, it is about the entire machine around her. People are not simply rejecting Erika Kirk the person. They are rejecting the push, the packaging, the presentation, and the feeling that a role is being created around her, whether the audience wants it or not. And when audiences feel something is being forced on them, they usually push back harder, not softer. That public resistance gets even stronger when people compare her to others who tried to rise on image more than ability. That is why you hear critics use harsh comparisons. They are trying to say in simple terms that she does not feel natural, does not feel earned, and does not feel powerful enough for the level of platform she is getting. Whether that comparison is fair or not, it shows the core problem. Her critics do not just dislike what she says, they do not buy the product at all. They do not believe in the role itself. And once that happens, the public starts digging. They go back into old relationships. They go back into social history. They go back into anything that may help them answer one central question. Who is this person really? Not the version introduced at events. Not the version praised from a stage. Not the version presented with titles and soft language. They want the deeper answer. They want to know whether this is a person shaped by private ambition, personal calculation, and a long desire to rise through the people around her. That is why the relationship timeline has become such a useful talking point for critics. It gives them a way to argue that the current public rise did not come out of nowhere. They can say, look at the pattern, look at the kinds of men, look at the timing, look at how each relationship seems, in their eyes, to line up with a kind of next step. Again, none of that proves intent. But in the world of public commentary, proof is not always what drives opinion. Patterns, timing, and public feeling often do. What also hurts Erika Kirk in this moment is that people are not looking at her with fresh eyes. They are looking at her through grief politics, power shifts, public tension, and distrust. That means even if she is doing some things out of sincere duty, many people will never read it that way. They believe too much has happened too fast. They believe too many changes have been made. They believe too much attention is now circling around her. And because they start from distrust, they end with harsher conclusions. There is another layer here that should not be ignored, and that is the difference between private life and public branding. Plenty of people have dating histories. Plenty of people date ambitious men or successful men or rising men. That alone does not make someone a climber. But when a person later becomes a public symbol, critics begin rereading their private life as if it were always part of a larger strategy. They look for clean lines between old romance and current status. They look for motive where maybe there was none. At the same time, sometimes public figures do build their lives through relationships and social access. Both things can be true. That is why people get so caught up in stories like this. Still, what matters most is not whether every critic has the full truth. What matters is that the image problem is now very real. A growing number of people do not see Erika Kirk as a reluctant figure. They see her as someone who is comfortable with image, comfortable with power, and comfortable being centered. That is the issue she would have to overcome if she ever wanted broad trust. And right now, it does not look like that trust is growing. It looks like the opposite. Every public appearance now seems to deepen that gap. Instead of calming critics, it appears to confirm them. Instead of making people say, maybe we judged too fast, it makes them say, no, this is exactly what we thought. That is a dangerous place for any public figure to be. Because once your critics begin seeing every new event as confirmation, you lose the benefit of the doubt. And losing the benefit of the doubt is often the start of a much bigger decline in public support. A lot of this comes down to one uncomfortable thought. People do not like feeling used. If viewers believe a person is standing in front of them not because of deep ability or real calling, but because they found a path through relationships and circumstance, they feel manipulated. They feel like an image is being sold to them. They feel like emotion, tragedy, and status are all being mixed together to build a new public brand. And when people feel that way, they react with anger. That anger then turns into scrutiny. Scrutiny turns into storytelling. Storytelling turns into a wider narrative. And that wider narrative is what we are seeing right now. It says Erika Kirk did not just appear in the spotlight. It says she moved toward it. It says the current moment is not a surprise. It says the current moment is the result of a longer pattern in which relationships, image, and ambition all work together. Whether that story is fully true is still open to debate, but there is no question that many people now believe it. The biggest reason this narrative is spreading is because it offers a simple answer to a confusing situation. When people cannot understand why someone is being elevated so fast, they search for a theory that makes the rise feel logical. The theory critics are building is that Erika Kirk has always been moving toward fame through attachment, through social closeness, and through being near men with public potential. To them, that explains the past and the present at the same time. It gives them one frame that ties everything together. That does not mean the frame is perfect. It does not mean the frame is fair, but it does mean the frame is powerful. And powerful stories are hard to beat once they take hold in the public mind, especially when the person at the center keeps appearing in exactly the kinds of settings that seem to support the story. Big stage, big names, big title, big attention. For critics, it all looks like proof of appetite. It all looks like a person who is not shrinking from public fame at all, but stepping into it with both feet. The hardest part for Erika Kirk may be that some critics say they originally wanted to give her grace. They wanted to be fair. They wanted to believe she was simply trying to navigate a painful situation. But in their view, the more public the image became, the more that grace disappeared. The bigger the presentation grew, the more the doubt grew with it. And once people feel like their sympathy has been used up, they often become far more severe. That shift from sympathy to suspicion is where the real damage happens. In the beginning, people are careful. They hesitate. They do not want to judge too fast. But once they decide, in their own mind, that the spotlight is being embraced too openly, the tone changes, then they do judge. Then they do revisit the past. Then they do ask what kind of person would move like this. Then they do start connecting one relationship to another and one public role to another. What all of this means is that Erika Kirk is no longer being judged only on what she says or does today. She is being judged through a full story people think they now understand. That story says she has long wanted closeness to power. It says she has long wanted influence. It says she has long moved through relationships that offered access to status, and that today's public role is just the clearest version of that pattern. Again, critics believe this strongly. Others may reject it. But this is the story driving the backlash. And if that story keeps growing, then every new title, every public honor, every stage appearance, and every media moment will only raise the same question again. Is this really about leadership, or is it about spotlight? Is this really about service, or is it about attention? Is this really about carrying something forward, or is it about finally stepping into a role that she always wanted but could not reach on her own? Those questions may be harsh, but they are now at the center of the public conversation. In the end, that is why the dating history matters to critics, even if it does not prove what they claim. To them, it is not random background. It is part of a pattern. It is part of how they explain the present. It is part of why they no longer see the current public rise as natural or innocent. They see it as connected to a longer path, a path shaped by attachment, ambition, and movement toward higher visibility through the men she was closest to at different points in life. Whether that reading is fully fair is something every viewer has to decide for themselves. But what cannot be denied is that the public image problem is now serious. Erika Kirk is not only facing disagreement, she is facing a deep loss of trust from people who think they have finally figured out the real story behind the image. And once the public starts believing that someone is not just in the spotlight but chasing it, that belief becomes very hard to reverse. So this is no longer just about one stage walk, one viral clip, or one wave of criticism. It is about a larger judgment forming in real time. A judgment that says Erika Kirk is not simply being placed in front of the public. A judgment that says she wants to be there. A judgment that says the path to that place may have started long before this current moment. And that is exactly why so many people are now looking backward at her dating history, her public image, and her rise all at once, trying to decide if the pattern they think they see has been there from the very beginning.